Hey folks, John Peniel. Another beautiful day in Lower Spokane, Washington. Right now I'm on Beacon Hill. It's my favorite mountain to hike up on. Okay, so this is part 2 of progressive rock and progressive rock bands. In my last video on this, I had talked about how progressive rock, or prog rock as it's popularly known as, how it started. Its official start was in 1969, with the advent of the very classic album King Crimson. They were an English band. I think they're still around, by the way. And so in that video, I just showed the progression of progressive rock. It wouldn't be progressive rock if it didn't progress. You know, it has to progress. It can't stay the same. I showed the progression of progressive rock, how it originally started as an English movement, an English rock movement. But as time went on, in the early 70s, other countries were getting in on the action, on the prog rock action. I might have mentioned this in my other video. There was a really great progressive rock band that came out of the Netherlands called Focus. They came out around 1970. They produced a series of very excellent albums throughout the first half of the 70s. And I mentioned Genesis before. Genesis was an English rock. So let's go into other progressive rock bands that were coming out of other places other than England. Let's see what would be a good place to go to. Let's go to America. America was not putting out it wasn't really putting out the prog rock like the other countries were, you know, mainly in Europe, you know, England and other countries in Europe. Until around 1974, a band called Kansas. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some progressive rock bands, American progressive rock bands before that, but they weren't really making a big headway until Kansas came on the scene. And as you can guess by the name of the band, yes, that's where they came from. They were based in Kansas. You wouldn't have guessed by the name of this band that they were producing some really exciting, groundbreaking progressive rock in the American tradition. You know, Kansas, boring, right? You know, but don't be deceived by appearances. So they came out, they busted out on the scene in 1974 and produced a slew of classic, groundbreaking progressive rock albums from 74 up to around 79. How can I describe Kansas? Well, Kansas was doing things with the prog rock genre that the other bands from Europe were not doing. Kansas rocked. I mean, they had a sort of like a boogie rock, you know, it's just that makes you want to get up and dance and just kind of rock out, but it was progressive at the same time. I guess the closest band to that came to that sort of feel that was not an American band, but they were from Scotland, I think, it's Jethro Tull. They could rock too. But there was something about Kansas that had that little extra rock feel to it, and they had a bit more of an accessibility to their music than a lot of their progressive rock peers. Carry on my wayward son. You know, you've all heard that. Very accessible. I mean, these were big hits on the radio when they first came out. Let's see, what can I say? What else can I say? Not other than that, though, there wasn't too much happening in the progressive rock scene in America, even though, you know, Kansas was paving the way for that. Let's see. There were some really good progressive rock bands that were coming out of America throughout the 70s, but they're so very little known. You know, no airplay at all. You know, they sold very little records. And generally, speaking, they would put out 1 or 2 records and they would disband, and that was it. But they put out some really excellent stuff. I'm trying to remember the name of some of these bands. Okay, here's one. Babylon. There was a really interesting, quirky, progressive rock band from Florida in the late 70s, somewhere around 77, 78, around there. I think, to my knowledge, they only put out 1 album back in 78, and the name of the album was Babylon. It has kind of a weird album cover. It looks like some sort of alien, alien head or whatever, but the music's real interesting. It's kind of derivative, though, of a little bit of Genesis. There's definitely a lot of Genesis influence in it. But what sets this music apart from the rest of the progressive rock is the singer's voice. A very, very interesting, unique voice, singing. It's hard to describe his singing style. It's extremely idiosyncratic, but it draws you in. So that's Babylon. I'm trying to remember this other band that came out around 75 in America.